I sat in the dark. The only light was the blue glow from my monitor. It was 2014 a.m. The email notification dinged. A soft ping in the silence. It was from Richard's lawyer. The subject line was dry. Voluntary financial disclosure. I clicked the PDF. It downloaded slowly. I opened it. My eyes went straight to the bottom. Total net worth $12,500 and how it ends. I read it twice. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt cold. It was insulting. Richard is a CEO? He drives a car that costs more than that. We live on Star Island. This spreadsheet was a joke. The assets column was blank, just zeros. But the liabilities column was full. Line after line of debt, corporate restructuring, market adjustments, liquidation events. It all sounded very professional. It was all fake. And then I saw it. Line item 4B, Sienna Price Consulting Services. He's paying his girlfriend $50,000 a month and writing it off as a loss. I took a sip of cold coffee. It tasted like ash. If you've ever been lied to by someone you trusted, you know this taste. He thinks I'm stupid. He thinks I don't know how to read a balance sheet. But I am a commercial broker. I deal with sharks every day. Developers, bankers, lawyers. I know a con when I see one. Flashback to 2009. The Biltmore Hotel ballroom. The chandeliers were sparkling. We were drinking champagne. Richard slid the prenup across the table. It was bound in leather. He said, "Please understand, Marisol, I need to protect the company." He looked so sincere. I picked up the pen. It was heavy. I signed my name. He thought he was locking his money away from me. He didn't realize he was signing his own death warrant. Because I learned the game. I learned it better than him. You know that feeling when your gut tells you something is wrong? My gut was screaming. I looked at the spreadsheet again. He claims he has no liquid cash. He claims he has no property. But he forgot one thing. He forgot who manages his office lease. He's probably in his office right now, working late with the lights on, thinking he's safe, thinking he's won. I typed the address into the property appraiser website, 1000 Brickell Avenue. I saw the owner of record, Velez and Associates. I bought that building 3 years ago. I am his landlord. The lie hung in the air like smoke. I could smell his arrogance. He thought he could hide millions in shell companies. He used trusts in the Caymans. He used LLCs in Delaware. I'd seen it all before. In Miami, everyone is hiding something. The only difference is I usually find it. And this time, the stakes are personal. I don't get mad, I get the ledger. He thinks he's broke. I sold the building he's currently standing in 3 years ago. He's about to find out how much I know. You don't look for the man, you look for the ego. I sat back in my leather chair and stared at the PDF on the screen. $12,500. That is what Richard Sterling, CEO of a supposed tech unicorn, claims he has to his name. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen down the hall. It was 2:37 a.m. The blue light from my monitor cut through the darkness of my home office. I picked up the pen I'd been chewing on and set it down on the mahogany desk. I needed a clear head. I didn't search for his name. If Richard is hiding money, he isn't stupid enough to put his own name on the deed. He's arrogant, but he's not incompetent. I logged into the professional dashboard. If you've never used commercial real estate software, let me explain it to you. It's like Google Earth, but for money. I navigated to the advanced search filters. You know how some people say, follow the money? In Miami, you follow the water. Richard has a pathological need for a view. He needs to see the ocean to feel powerful. So I filtered for closed transactions in the last 24 months. I selected Brickell Key and Coconut Grove. I checked the box for cash buyer. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I clicked search. The screen flickered for a second, then a grid of properties populated. I leaned in closer to the screen. Most of them were boring. Standard LLCs. Law firms. I started from the bottom of the list. Row 12. Column 4. Property, Unit 3901 at the Asia Condominium. Purchase price, $4.2 million. Sale date, November 14th of last year. I know that date. That was 3 days before he told me he was working late on a merger. I clicked the link for the buyer details. The name popped up in bold black letters. Holdings, Group 442. Never heard of it. I opened a new tab and ran a corporate search on the name. Nothing. Registered in Delaware. Agent for Service of Process is a law firm in Wilmington. A shell company. Classic. But I wasn't done. I went back to the property records. I looked for the contact email for the condo association. There it was, a Gmail address. Holdings, group442@gmail.com. I stared at the numbers. 44, 2. My heart started beating a little faster. It's such a specific number. Why 44? I closed my eyes and let my memory rewind. I was standing in the hallway of our old house in Star Island. Richard was drunk. He was hanging a framed jersey on the wall. He kept pointing at the number on the back. 44. Middle linebacker. State champions 1995. He made me kiss that stupid jersey before we went to bed that night. I opened my eyes. The cursor was blinking on the screen. He thought he was being clever. He thought he was burying the evidence. But he just signed his name on it in invisible ink. Tell me in the comments, what's the dumbest thing your ex ever did to hide something? Because Richard, he used his high school football jersey number, Holdings Group 442. Cute. Sentimental idiot. If you're an amateur, you stop at the first find. If you're me, you assume it's the tip of the iceberg. The jersey number was his signature. Richard Sterling thought he was clever. He thought number 442 was his little secret. He didn't know I was about to turn it into his prison. I opened a new tab on my browser. The blue light from the monitor washed over my face. It was 2:45 a.m. The house was dead silent. I navigated to the Miami-Dade County Clerk's website. I typed 482 into the public records search bar. I hit enter. The page loaded. And there it was, a pattern of fraud stretching back 3 years. It wasn't just Holdings Group 442. There was Sterling 442 Holdings, 442 Properties of Miami. They were all listed under the same agent. Richard thought he was building an empire. He was actually just building a paper trail. And this is where it gets really interesting. I scrolled down to a document filed in 2021. It was a rental agreement for a storage unit, not in Berkeley, not in a fancy zip code. It was on Okeechobee Road in Hialeah. I clicked the link to download the PDF. The file name was scanus1.pdf. I opened it. The image was grainy and crooked. Someone had taken a photo of a document with a phone. I zoomed in on the signature line. The date was November 12th, 2021. That date stopped me cold. I remembered that day vividly. It was a Tuesday night. Richard was pacing the living room floor in his socks. He was sweating. He looked like he had seen a ghost. I can still see him standing there. He was wearing those gray sweatpants he loved. He kept running his hand through his hair. He told me he had liquidated his entire portfolio. He said he had to pay off a massive business debt. He looked me right in the eye. He said, "We have nothing left, Marisol. It's all gone." I remember feeling sorry for him. I remember holding his hand while he cried about his failure. It was all a performance. He didn't liquidate anything. He was just moving the furniture around. And the storage unit in Hialeah was the new address. I looked at the company name on the contract. That was the moment I felt it. Pure, unadulterated satisfaction. Because Richard is arrogant. He thinks details are for little people. He thinks nobody looks at the fine print but him. But I was looking at the fine print right then. The name on the contract read Sterling 442 LLC. Let me say that again. Sterling, with one G. He had misspelled his own last name on a legal document. He was in such a rush to hide his assets. He couldn't even be bothered to spell check. I laughed out loud in that empty office. It echoed off the mahogany walls. I grabbed my phone and took a screenshot. Then I printed the document. The printer whirred to life in the corner. The paper was still warm when I touched it. I circled the typo in red ink. I wrote Exhibit A at the top of the page. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a confession. Due diligence reveals everything. Even the things you try to hide in Hialeah. I want you to guess what he's hiding in that unit. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. Would you have driven there that night? Because I considered it. I sat there for a full minute, keys in hand, but I didn't go. I'm saving that surprise for Arnold Vane. You don't rent a storage unit in Hialeah for old sports equipment. You rent it to hide things you don't want the IRS or your wife to see. The blue light from the monitor was the only light in the room. It cast long shadows across the mahogany desk. I took a sip of my coffee. It was ice cold. I leaned back in the leather chair. The highly stored unit could wait until morning. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I minimized the PDF files. My mind drifted to Sienna Price, the consultant, the woman Richard paid 50 grand a month. I clicked on her tagged photos. She was wearing clothes I paid for. Eating food I likely paid for. It was funny, in a sick, twisted way. You know that feeling when you know someone is living a lie, but the rest of the world thinks they're perfect? That was her feed. It made me sick. I opened a private browser window. The kind that doesn't save history. I typed in Instagram.com. I searched for her handle. At Sienna Lux Living, original, right? Her bio listed her astrological sign, not her job title. Typical. I clicked through her highlights. Dubai trip. Private jet. Then I saw it. Date night. Posted last Tuesday. It was pushing 3 a.m. now. The house was dead silent. The video played in a loop. It was shaky. Handheld. Filmed by him, probably. He always did terrible camera work, but the focus was sharp enough. Her hand came into the frame. She was holding a Cabernet. Red wine. She knew I hated red wine. Then she rested her hand on the table. The light hit the metal. A Patek Philippe Nautilus. Reference 5711. The holy grail of watches. Retail price, 50 grand. Resale, double that. I recognized that watch immediately. Not just because of the price tag, but because I bought it for him. For our 10th anniversary, I hovered my finger over the trackpad. My palm was sweating against the mouse. I zoomed in on the clasp. The pixels blurred, then sharpened. You could see the engraving. 2R forever. That was my handwriting. I had the jeweler custom order it. My stomach turned over. He told me it was taken in a home invasion. He was devastated. He cried. We got the insurance check 3 weeks later. $92,000. Direct deposit. I remember asking him why he didn't replace it. He said the sentimental value was gone. Liar. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the laptop. I just sat there. The air conditioning was humming in the background. It sounded like a ticking clock. It matched the pounding in my ears. I hit Command-Shift-4. The screenshot snapped. File save as. Stolen Orcs Reich Sienna. Another folder for Arnold. Another nail in the coffin. I want you to pause for a second. What would you do if you saw this? Would you call him right then? Or would you keep digging? I decided to keep digging. I scrolled down to the tag location. Komodo on Brickell. That was 2 blocks from his office. He told me he was in Tallahassee that night. I checked the date on the story, November 14th. The same day he bought the condo. He bought her dinner with my insurance money. While I was at home worrying about his safety, my hands were steady now. The anger was gone. It was replaced by cold, hard math. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was a spreadsheet, and every lie was a red entry. I added up the potential damages, the fraud, the perjury, the tax evasion. It wasn't millions anymore. It was a lifestyle, and it was all funded by me. Insurance fraud, concealment of assets, and adultery all in one 15-second video. Thank you, Sienna, for your vanity. I saved the screenshot. The file joined the others in the Arnold Vane folder. It was getting crowded in there, but I wasn't done. It was 3:18 a.m. The only light in the room came from my monitors. It cast long blue shadows across the mahogany desk. I rubbed my eyes. They felt gritty, like sandpaper. I reached for my coffee mug. It was stone cold. I drank it anyway. The bitterness helped me focus. I went back to the storage unit receipt. I stared at the billing address. It was a P.O. box. But below that, there was a property location line. 1000 Ocean Drive, Unit PH1, Miami Beach. I typed the address into a new search bar. I bypassed Google Maps. I went straight to the Miami-Dade property appraiser site first. Nothing came up under that exact string. So I switched to a rental aggregator. I typed in the building name. The search results loaded. One listing stood out immediately, Luxury Ocean View Retreat, South Beach. It was listed on Airbnb. I sat up straighter in my chair. The leather creaked under me. I clicked the link. The page loaded. High-resolution photos filled the screen. It was a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows. White marble floors that looked like ice. A terrace overlooking the ocean. It was stunning, and it was familiar. I zoomed in on the living room photo. There was a painting on the wall. Abstract. Blue and gold swirls. I recognized it. We bought that at Art Basel 5 years ago. He swore it was an investment. I scrolled down past the photos. Photos can be staged. I wanted the details. I found the amenities list. This is where the truth lives. The first few items were standard. Wi-Fi, pool access, elevator. Then I saw it. Peloton bike plus daily classes subscription. Richard won't go to a gym. He's too vain to be seen sweating in public. He needs that bike in private. The next item made me laugh out loud. Full golf simulator setup with projector. He loves golf. He hates playing with people he can't beat, so he built a simulator. The list continued. Dual espresso machine. Lavazza mode only. He is obsessed with his espresso routine. He measures the beans. He times the pull. He's a creature of habit. This wasn't a rental property. This was his secondary home. I looked at the availability calendar. It was a sea of red, blocked out, booked for months. This wasn't a passion project. It was a business. I did the math in my head. South Beach rates in December. A penthouse like this? Easy. $800 a night. Maybe $1,000. Let's say $800 times 30 days. That's $24,000 a month. Multiply that by 12. $288,000 a year. All cash. All unreported. He told the judge he was broke. He told the mediator he was drowning in debt. Meanwhile, he's sitting on a $300,000 cash cow. The greed is actually impressive. It's stupid, but it's impressive. I scrolled back up to the host profile. There was no name, just a username, Mia Hostsplel. The profile picture was a generic sunset. Boring. But there was a contact button. Click to view phone number. I clicked it. A number popped up on the screen. 305-555-1199. My breath hitched. I knew that number. I picked up my cell phone. I scrolled through my contacts. I stopped at Do Not Answer. I opened the details. The number matched perfectly. It was the burner phone I found in his locker last year. The one he claimed was for international clients. Sure, Richard. International clients named Sienna. I wasn't just finding secrets anymore. I was building a case. Every file I save is another pound of flesh for Arnold to take. Arnold Vane is a shark, and I just chummed the water. I took a screenshot of the host page, then one of the calendar, then one of the amenities list. I renamed the files. Airbnb, Hust, Forfi, Profi, Airbnb, Irvi, Revenue, Stream, Airbnb, Stolen Uscas. I dragged them into the Arnold folder. The folder icon glowed on my desktop. It looked heavy. It looked dangerous. I leaned back in the chair. The adrenaline was still pumping. My hands were steady now. The shaking was gone. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is messy. Anger makes you make mistakes. I was past anger. I was in the zone. This is what I do. I find the hidden value. I analyze the market, and I execute the deal. And honestly, I want to know what you would do here. Do you call him? Do you text the burner number? Or do you sit in the dark and collect the evidence until the building falls down? Let me know in the comments, because I already made my choice. I looked at the screen again. He thinks he's so clever. He thinks the shell companies protect him. He thinks the Gym Buddy alias is enough. But he forgot the first rule of real estate. Follow the utility bills. Follow the cash flow. He's not just hiding assets, he's generating off-the-books cash flow through this rental. I need to know who owns the deed. The Miami-Dade property appraiser gave me nothing but a blank white screen. I expected that. I didn't panic. I sat back in my leather chair. The leather creaked loudly in the silence of the room. It was 3:18 a.m. The house was dead quiet. I had time. I navigated away from the local records. I had to go deeper. I opened a new tab. The Delaware Division of Corporation search page loaded. You know that feeling when you know exactly where a rat is hiding? That was me. I typed 1000 Ocean Drive into the search bar. Nothing. So I tried a different angle. I searched for the unit number instead. PH1. Bingo, an entity popped up immediately. SB 442 Holdings, LLC. There was that number again, 442. His high school football jersey. It was almost insulting. Does he really think I'm that stupid? I clicked the file number. The screen refreshed with the corporate details. Status. Active. Date of formation. November 15, 2021. Then I scrolled down to the bottom line. Registered agent. Harbor Corporate Solutions, Inc. The address was listed as 1209 North Orange Street, Wilmington, Delaware, the same address as 2 million other shell companies. I froze. My hand was hovering over the mouse. I knew that name. I knew it from a lifetime ago. It was 2005. We were young, broke, and completely in love. We were standing in a tiny living room in Coconut Grove. The walls were painted a horrible shade of yellow. Richard was holding the keys to our first fixer-upper. He looked at me with those big, innocent eyes. He said, "This is just the start, Mar. We're going to build an empire." Well, he built an empire all right, just not with me. He built it on a foundation of sand. He used Harbor Corporate Solutions back then to hold the title. And 18 years later, he's using them to hide a South Beach sex pad. I glanced down at the stack of files on my mahogany desk. There was the utility bill from the Hialeah storage unit. It was tucked underneath the insurance statement. I pulled it out. The paper was crinkled at the edges. There was a note scribbled on the margin in blue ink. It said, Sterling 442 LLC, 1R. He misspelled his own alias. Tell me in the comments, is this arrogance or just stupidity? I traced the letters with my fingernail. The loops in the S were wide. The tail on the N was short. That was Richard's handwriting. He is using the same infrastructure, the same agents, the same lazy mistakes. It's pathetic, really. He thinks Delaware's a black hole where money goes to disappear. He forgets who he married. I used to broker deals in Wilmington. I know exactly how to pierce that veil. He thinks Delaware is a black hole. I used to sell commercial real estate in Delaware. I know exactly where the bodies are buried. The Hialeah utility bill was a smoking gun, but it was just paper. I needed to see the digital blood flowing through the veins of the accounts. I looked at the clock on the wall. 3:22 a.m. The red numbers glowed in the dark office. Richard always bragged about his firewall of privacy. He forgot I know the architects who built those walls. I picked up my cell phone from the coaster. A ring of condensation was still there from my earlier drink. My thumb hovered over a contact name, Elias. We went to college together, but now he manages high-risk compliance at First National downtown. You know that feeling when you have to call in a favor at 3 a.m.? It feels like holding a grenade with the pin already pulled. I pressed call. The line rang twice through the speakers. A groggy voice answered. Marisol, this better be good. I said, Richard just wired $850,000 to the Caymans. I need the source doc. The line went silent. I heard the rustle of bedsheets. He said, I'm at my computer. Give me 10 minutes. This is risky. I set the phone down on the mahogany desk. The wood felt cold against my palm. The silence in the room was heavy. The only sound was the low hum of my computer tower fan. I stared at the utility bill on the table. Sterling 442 LLC. The misspelling that was about to cost him everything. I took a sip of the cold coffee sitting on my desk. It tasted like charcoal. My phone buzzed. An email notification popped up on my monitor screen. Subject as requested. I clicked the attachment. A PDF loaded onto the screen. The page was a bit blurry, scanned in a hurry by someone who didn't want to get caught. But the numbers were sharp, deadly sharp. I leaned in closer to the monitor. The blue light washed over my face, reflecting in the dark window behind me. I scanned the header. First National International Wire Outbound. Date October 14th. Origin account, Sterling Tech Operating. Beneficiary, Cayman National Trust and Company. Amount, $850,000 and a SIST. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like a physical blow. That was the money from the refinance. The money he told the judge vanished in the market crash last year. The judge believed him. I almost believed him. I scrolled down to the bottom of the page. The memo line made me laugh out loud. It was a cold, humorless sound in the empty room. Memo Dev Flash Q3 Retainer Software Development Services. Software development, Richard's company is Paw Pal. It's an app for booking dog walkers. I know for a fact his entire tech budget is 3 guys in a garage in Tampa. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done in this moment. Because looking at that wire transfer, I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt pure, unadulterated rage. He thinks I'm stupid. He thinks software is a magic word that explains away theft to a housewife. He thinks I don't know what Q3 development costs actually look like. I took a screenshot of the wire. I dragged the file to the folder named Arnold Zane. The file size was 2.4 megabytes. But the weight of it felt like tons. This wasn't just hiding money. This was asset flight. In divorce court, moving cash offshore is the nuclear option. It proves intent to deprive the spouse of marital assets. It shows malice aforethought. I looked at the time again. 3:41 a.m. The city outside was still asleep. The lights of Brickell twinkled in the distance like fake diamonds. I typed a quick text to Elias. "You're a good man. Don't let Richard know you sent this." He replied instantly. "Get him, Marisol." I closed the laptop. The room went pitch black. I sat there in the dark listening to the air conditioning click on. Richard thinks he's safe behind the shell companies and the tax havens, but he just gave me the smoking gun. Software development? Richard's company makes an app for booking dog walkers. He's not transferring money for code. He's moving it out of reach. I didn't sleep a wink. I just sat there and watched the sun rise over Biscayne Bay. By 9 a.m., I was showered and dressed. I put on my navy suit, the one I wear for closings. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red, but my hands were steady. I grabbed the manila folder from my desk. It was 3 inches thick. I walked out to the garage. The Miami heat was already rising off the pavement. I drove downtown to the Brickell Financial District. I parked in the garage under Arnold's building. The elevator ride took forever. I got off on the 15th floor. The receptionist didn't even ask my name. She just pointed to the double doors at the end. I walked into Arnold Bain's office. It smelled like old money and leather polish. Bookshelves lined every wall. The hum of the AC was loud. Arnold was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk. He was reading a document. He didn't look up. I dropped the folder onto the wood. The sound echoed through the quiet room. On the cover, I had stuck a yellow Post-it. I'd written 4 words on it in black Sharpie. It said, "The smoking gun." Arnold finally looked up. He took off his glasses. He opened the folder. His eyes widened slightly. He pulled out the Cayman wire transfer first. He studied the date, October 14th. Then he looked at the screenshot of the watch. Sienna's wrist was clearly visible. He let out a low whistle. He said, "Okay, Marisol, you were kidding." I sat down in the leather chair opposite him. I crossed my legs. I said he moved $850,000 offshore. I said he called it a retainer for software dev. I said, but the beneficiary is a Cayman trust. Arnold kept reading. He flipped a utility bill from the storage unit. He saw the handwritten note, Sterling 442. He said he's using an alias. I nodded. I said, and he filed the paperwork himself. I said, he's arrogant, Arnold. He thinks he's untouchable. If you've ever dealt with a narcissist, you know this look. That smug belief that they are smarter than everyone else. I told you I don't get mad. I get the ledger, and this ledger was about to burn him down. Arnold closed the folder. He looked at me over his glasses. He said, "This changes the entire deposition strategy." I said, "Good." I said, "Here is what I want to do." I leaned forward. I put my hands on his desk. I said, "We go in there blind." I said, "We don't show him any of this." I said, "We let him swear to tell the truth." I said, "And then we ask him about the money." I said, "Let him lie. Let him commit perjury on the record." Arnold smiled. It was a terrifying smile. He picked up his pen. He said, "I like the way you think." He said, "We set the trap." He said, "He walks right into it." He said, "And then we spring it." I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't fear. It was satisfaction. Pure cold satisfaction. I stood up to leave. Arnold stopped me with a wave of his hand. He looked me dead in the eye. His voice dropped an octave. He said, "We're not going to settle." He said, "We're going to bleed him dry legally." He leaned back in his chair. He said, "Perjury is the gift that keeps on giving." I walked out of that office feeling lighter. The war had just begun, and Richard had no idea what was coming. I walked into the conference room at exactly 9 o'clock. The air conditioning was blasting. It felt good against my skin. I hadn't slept in 30 hours. My navy suit was pressed to perfection. My makeup was flawless. Nobody could see the cracks, just the way I wanted it. Richard was already there. He sat at the head of the mahogany table. His lawyer was beside him. I took a seat across from them. I placed my leather folder on the table. I didn't say a word. You know that feeling when you hold a winning hand? It's a very specific kind of quiet. The court reporter set up her machine. Click, click, click. The stenotype keys were sharp. I watched Richard adjust his cufflinks. He looked bored. He looked arrogant. He thought this was a formality. He thought he had already won. He has no idea what's in that folder. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. Would you have tipped your hand or would you have waited? I waited. The lawyer stood up. He was a shark in a cheap suit. He started the questions fast. He was trying to rattle me. He asked about my bank accounts. I answered smoothly. He asked about my spending habits. I answered precisely. My voice didn't waver once. It was like reading a balance sheet. Just numbers. Just facts. Due diligence reveals everything. I watched Richard check his watch. He tapped his finger on the table. He was impatient. He wanted this to be over. I wanted it to last forever. Then the lawyer switched gears. He asked about Richard's assets. I looked at Richard. I said, "You should ask him." Richard smiled. He leaned forward. He looked right at the camera. He said, "I've liquidated everything, Marisol. You know that." I stared at his face. Every line was a lie. I asked him about the offshore accounts. He laughed. A short, cold laugh. He said, "What offshore accounts? I'm broke, remember?" I felt my heart rate spike. I took a sip of water. The cup was shaking just a little. I set it down. I asked him about the property in South Beach, the condo on Ocean Drive, the one with the Peloton. Richard shook his head. He looked at his lawyer. He looked back at me. He said, "I don't own any property in Miami Beach." He lied. He lied under oath. And it was beautiful. I just smiled at him. Let him dig the hole deeper. The lawyer objected. He said the question was harassing. I sat back in my chair. I crossed my legs. I watched Richard sweat. Just a single bead on his forehead. He wiped it away. He didn't know I had the screenshots. He didn't know about the wire transfer. He didn't know about the Caymans. He thought he was safe. He thought he was smarter than me. Men always think they're smarter. I glanced at the security camera in the corner. The red light was blinking. It was recording everything. His arrogance, his lies, his perjury. I thought about the storage unit in Halia. I thought about the watch on Sienna's wrist. Every piece of the puzzle was locked in my head. I didn't get mad. I got the ledger. And this is where it gets really messed up. He isn't just hiding money. He's hiding it in my name. Well, not my name, my company's name. He thinks I don't check the subsidiary accounts. He thinks I just signed the papers. He underestimates me. And that will be his undoing. The deposition ended 2 hours later. Richard stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He offered me his hand. He said, "See you in court, honey." I didn't take his hand. I just gathered my files. I said, "See you in court, Richard." He walked out laughing. His lawyer followed him. They thought they had dominated me. They thought I was weak. I sat there alone in the conference room. The room was silent. The hum of the fridge was loud. I opened my folder. I looked at the photo of the wire transfer. $850,000. One click of a pen and it's over. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the traffic on Brickell. The cars were moving so fast, nobody knows what's happening in the building next door. Nobody knows the war is being fought in conference rooms. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to guess. Because I promise you, nobody saw this coming. He looked me in the eye and said he didn't own a property in Miami Beach. I just smiled. Let him dig the hole deeper. My phone buzzed against the black leather seat. I was sitting in the back of a town car. We were crawling along the Dolphin Expressway. It was 11:15 a.m. The Miami sun was blasting through the tinted glass. I picked up the phone, an email from Richard's lawyer. Subject, final settlement proposal. I opened the PDF attachment. The text was sharp. Alimony only. No asset split. They offered me $5,000 a month. Can you believe the audacity? $5,000 to walk away from everything. I stared at the number. It was insulting. It was pathetic. I looked out the window. The traffic was gridlocked. Brake lights stretched for miles. A sea of red. My blood didn't boil. It just ran cold. I opened a reply box. I had to sell this. I had to be the exhausted wife. I am tired of fighting, I typed. I just want this over with. I paused. My thumb hovered over the glass. If the terms are final, I will sign. I hit send. The message vanished. The trap was set. They think they bullied the little housewife. You know that feeling when someone underestimates you? Use it. But Richard forgot who he married. He thinks he's a criminal mastermind. He needed a place to park liquid cash, so where did he hide it? In the last place anyone would look. A subsidiary account of my own company. Vella's Property Management, sub-account 4402. He used my real estate license number. 4402. He thought I never checked the old ledgers. I don't get mad. I get the spreadsheet. The balance was $2.3 million. He was hiding it in plain sight, disguised as operational reserves. He pushed for this quick settlement. He needed to legitimize his poverty. But now he needs that cash. Maybe for the Caymans, maybe for Sienna. I opened my banking app. The logo spun on the screen. I navigated to the subsidiary accounts. I tapped on account 4402. The funds were still there, waiting. I selected Account Services. Then I tapped Freeze Assets. A warning box popped up. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. The reason? Pending legal investigation. I pressed Confirm. The screen turned gray. Access denied. The town car hit a pothole. My coffee splashed in the cup holder. I didn't even flinch. My phone buzzed again. It was Richard's lawyer. Excellent news. We will prepare the documents. They are rushing. They are drafting papers for money that is gone. I leaned back against the headrest. The air conditioning was humming. The satisfaction was physical. It settled in my chest. Tell me in the comments, would you have played along this long? They think they've won. They think I'm taking the alimony and running. They have no idea I've already frozen the account they're trying to write the check from. I didn't go straight home after the town car dropped me off. I had the driver turn around. We were heading back to Brickell. The town car glided over the causeway. The sunlight was glinting hard off the Biscayne Bay water. It was 20:15 p.m. I walked into my office on Brickell Avenue. The receptionist wasn't at her desk. The office was quiet. Just the low hum of the central air. I went straight to my private suite. I locked the heavy oak door behind me. I kicked off my heels. The carpet felt soft under my stocking feet. I sat down in my leather chair. It squeaked as I leaned forward. I pulled the crinkled Hialeah receipt from my bag. I looked at the blue ink note again. Sterling 442 LLC. I typed the storage facility address into the property appraiser search bar. The screen flickered. A map of Hialeah loaded up. A little yellow box appeared for the storage unit. Boring. But then I noticed something in the margin. The billing address was different. It was listed as Key Largo FL 333-7. Why would a storage unit in Hialeah build to the Keys? I copied the address. I pasted it into Zillow. The page loaded slowly. Then the photos popped up. Aerial photography of a deep canal. A sprawling modern mansion. 4,500 square feet, $3.5 million. Waterfront on every side. A boat lift capable of holding a 40-foot yacht. You know what you're thinking? Just a rental property, right? That's what I thought too. I scrolled down to the tax records tab. Owner history. November 12th. Private sale. Transfer of title. No realtor involved. No MLS listing. Cash deal. Off the books. I clicked the View Deed link. The PDF opened instantly. The legal language was dense, but the names were clear. Grantor, Sterling Tech Operating. But the grantee wasn't Richard. It read, the Eleanor Sterling Family Trust. I sat back in my chair. My hands went cold. Eleanor Sterling, Richard's mother. Suddenly, I wasn't in my office anymore. I was in Greenwich, Connecticut, winter 2008. Snow was falling outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. A fire was burning in the hearth, but the room felt freezing. Eleanor sat in a velvet wing chair. Her spine was perfectly straight. She held a teacup with a floral pattern. I remember the smell. Earl Grey and lavender. She looked at me. She said, Marisol, the ocean is filthy. She didn't smile. She said, it is full of salt and decay. Her voice was like ice cracking. She placed the cup on a coaster. She never drank a drop. We sat there for 2 hours. The tea went stone cold. Eleanor hates the water. She hates humidity. She hates Florida. She gets seasick on a ferry. Tell me in the comments what kind of person buys a boat dock for a woman who hates the ocean. It's a shell trust. Richard used his mother as a proxy. He thinks family trusts are impenetrable. He thinks I won't sue a grieving widow's trust. He's wrong. I don't get mad. I get the ledger. I picked up my cell phone, I snapped a photo of the screen, I sent it to Arnold Vane. The message was simple: asset number 4, Mommy's house. The phone buzzed instantly. His reply was short: undue influence. We can claw it back. I looked at the Zillow photos again. The master closet was empty. Just white shelves waiting for clothes. Probably for Sienna. He put a multi-million-dollar mansion in a trust for his mother? The woman who hates the ocean? Convenient, but trust can be pierced. You know that sinking feeling when you realize a lie goes much deeper than you thought? I just hit the bedrock. I was sitting at my desk in the home office. It was 2:45 p.m. The sun was blasting off Biscayne Bay. The light was blinding. I had to pull the blinds down to see the screen. I had just texted Arnold. Asset number 4, Mommy's house. But something was bothering me. The timeline. It didn't fit. I pulled up the Florida Bureau of Vital Statistics website. The interface was ugly. Gray boxes and blue text. I typed Eleanor Sterling into the search bar. My fingers were flying across the keyboard. I knew her date of birth by heart. May 12, 1952. I remembered it from the birthday parties I used to plan. I hit enter. The loading circle spun. Once, twice, then the screen populated. A scanned image popped up. A standard death certificate. I leaned in close to the monitor. The pixelated text was sharp. I read the name line. Eleanor Sterling. Okay. So far, so normal. Then I looked at the date. Date of death, March 14, 2022. I did the math in my head. That was 18 months ago. My eyes scrolled down to the cause. Cardiac arrest. Sudden, quick. I sat back in my leather chair. It made a squeak in the silence. I opened the deed for the Key Largo house again. A separate tab. The transfer date to the trust was June 12, 2023. Do you see the problem? You cannot transfer real estate into a trust for a person who is already dead. It's legally impossible. A trust requires a living beneficiary. I remember the funeral. I wore a black dress. I sent a massive arrangement of lilies. Richard cried. He actually cried. Or at least, he looked like he was crying. I even made a lasagna. I drove it to his condo in Brickell. He didn't even eat it. The lasagna sat in his fridge for a week. I saw it when I went over to get his mail. I was grieving a woman who wasn't there anymore. While he was planning how to use her name, he used his mother's legacy as a parking garage for his dirty money. He bought that $3.5 million mansion in Key Largo and put it in Eleanor's name. He thought the trust was a shield, an iron wall I couldn't climb, but he didn't do his due diligence. He didn't check the fine print. In Florida, probate law, if the beneficiary of a trust is deceased, the trust fails. It collapses immediately, like a house of cards in a hurricane, and when a trust like that fails, the assets don't go to the state, they revert to the grantor. The person who created it, the grantor, was Richard Sterling, and Richard Sterling is my husband. At least he is until the judge signs the papers. I picked up my phone. The screen was cool against my ear. I took a screenshot of the death certificate. I saved it as Exhibit D, the ghost. Then I printed it. The printer in the corner whirred to life. I walked over and grabbed the warm paper. The ink was still wet. I looked at the date again, March 14, the day the music died for Eleanor. But for Richard, it was just an opportunity. He thinks he's safe. He thinks he's protected by layers of shell companies and family history. He's arrogant. He thinks he's the smartest man in the room. But he forgot the golden rule of real estate. You have to verify the tenant. He tried to hide a waterfront mansion behind a dead woman's skirt. I dropped the paper into the red folder. It landed on top of the Cayman wire transfers. The folder is getting thick. The evidence is overwhelming. He's been funneling money into a trust for a ghost. And in Florida, if the beneficiary is dead, the assets revert to the estate, the marital estate. I dropped the death certificate into the red folder. It landed right on top of the Cayman wire transfer records. The folder was getting heavy. I sat back down in my leather chair. The leather creaked under my weight. It was a satisfying sound in the quiet office. I looked at the screen again. The deed transfer for the Key Largo house. The date was June 12, 2023. That was 15 months after Eleanor died. Fraud is obvious when you look at the dates. But conspiracy? Conspiracy is a team sport. I zoomed in on the bottom corner of the document. The notary block. You know those little details people forget? The things they think are just administrative noise? I scrolled down. My mouse clicked softly in the quiet office. The seal was clear. A standard Florida notary stamp. circular black ink. The name printed inside the stamp was legible. But then I looked at the signature. My heart skipped a beat. Not because I was scared, but because I knew that handwriting. I see it on consulting invoices every single month. The signature read, Sienna Price. Not just Sienna Price. Under it, the line said, Sienna Price, Notary Public, State of Florida. I froze. My hand hovered over the mouse. Let that sink in for a second. Richard's girlfriend, the woman eating dinners he charged to the company card. She notarized a deed transferring a house to a dead woman. I checked the commission number. It was valid. Then I saw the expiration date on her commission. It expires next month. She's not just a mistress, she's an accomplice. I pulled up a separate window on my monitor. Florida Statutes, Section 117, Notaries Public. I searched for penalties for false notarization. The screen was bright white text against a black background. A notary who knowingly notarizes a false instrument commits a felony of the 3rd degree. I took a screenshot. I dragged it into the folder named Arnold Vane. This changes everything. It's one thing for a husband to hide assets. It's another thing entirely when he brings a third party into the fraud. And not just any third party. The woman he's claiming is just a contractor. Have you ever caught 2 people lying to you and realized they rehearsed it? That's what this was. I looked at the timestamp on the file, June 12, 2023 at 10:14 a.m. I wonder where they were. I opened the scanned PDF again. I looked at the venue line. It said State of Florida, County of Miami-Dade. I remembered the Airbnb hosting profile for that time period. Sienna was active on the app. Was she notarizing fraudulent deeds from the South Beach condo? Probably. While wearing my husband's stolen watch. The audacity is actually kind of impressive. If you're going to commit a felony, maybe don't sign your legal name to it. But they got arrogant. They thought the Eleanor Sterling Trust was a magic shield. They thought nobody would ever look past the name of a grieving mother. Richard publicly convinced her it was just paperwork. Just sign here, babe. It's a family trust thing. Due diligence shows the trust is solid. She didn't do her due diligence. She just signed. That's how men like him operate. They use women as human shields. Only this time the shield is made of paper and it just caught fire. I saved the deed image as Exhibit E, the accomplice. Then I saved another copy as Sienna, prison, time. Maybe that's petty, I don't care. I picked up my phone. I needed to hear Arnold's voice, but I waited. I needed to let this settle. Due diligence reveals everything. It reveals the hidden accounts. It reveals the mistresses. And it reveals the felonies. I looked at the stack of evidence on my desk. The Cayman wires, the insurance fraud, the perjury trap, and now notary misconduct. Richard thinks this is a negotiation. He thinks we're just haggling over the price of the boat. He doesn't understand that I'm not negotiating. I'm dismantling him piece by piece, asset by asset, crime by crime. The sun was starting to go down outside the window. The light hit the mahogany desk. It cast a long shadow across the red folder. I stood up. My legs felt stiff. I walked over to the window. Down below on Brickell, the traffic was moving. People were going home. Richard was probably still in his office. Maybe Sienna was there. Maybe they were laughing about how smart they were. I sipped my cold coffee. It tasted bitter, but I didn't mind because I had the receipts. I had the death certificate, and I had Sienna's signature on a felony charge, conspiracy to commit fraud, notary misconduct. Richard didn't just drag himself into this. He dragged his mistress into the felony mud with him. I didn't go to Hialeah myself. I sent Elias. Elias is a retired private investigator. He drives a beige 1998 Corolla. It's the most invisible car in Miami. Nobody looks twice. I sat in my home office. The room was pitch black. The only light came from my phone screen. It was 10:14 p.m. I know because I checked the time. The feed was grainy black and white. It looked like security footage from a liquor store. The location was the Secure Store facility on Okeechobee Road. The sign was flickering in the background. Secure Store, the irony. Unit 42012, the one tied to Sterling 442. I watched a black Tahoe pull into the lot. It had temporary tags, paper plates. He parked under a broken streetlight. He killed the engine. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He wore a gray hoodie. Sweatpants. Nike runners. Richard Sterling never wears sweatpants. He wears Italian silk. He looked left. He looked right. He looked up at the security camera. He knew he was being watched. He just didn't know by whom. He walked up to the unit. He had a key in his hand. He opened the padlock. Click! He rolled the metal door up. It rattled loudly in the quiet night. I leaned in closer to the screen. My face reflected in the glass. He reached inside. He pulled out a canvas duffel bag. It was olive green, military grade. He grabbed the bottom handle with one hand. He grabbed the top strap with the other. His back straightened, he lifted. His knees dipped. That bag was heavy. I'm talking 40 pounds, maybe 50. He shuffled to the trunk. He heaved it inside. He went back 3 more times. He cleared that unit out in 4 minutes. I paused the video. I zoomed in on the bag. The fabric was straining. You could see the outline of the contents. Rectangular shapes, hard edges. That wasn't cash. Cash is soft. That was gold. Krugerrands. Bullion. Bars. He's liquidating. He's moving the hard assets. He knows the digital ones are frozen. He can't wire gold to the Caymans. He has to carry it. I felt a chill run down my spine, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. I took a sip of my cold coffee. It was bitter, just like this divorce. I know what you're thinking. Why not just confront him? Trust me, I'm getting there. But this is better. Due diligence reveals everything, even the things you hide in the dark. Suddenly, on the screen, Richard froze. He stood by the open trunk. He looked across the street, right at Elias's Corolla. He knew. He felt it. He dropped the last bag. It hit the asphalt with a dull thud. He didn't even pick it up. He jumped into the Tahoe. He threw it into reverse. The tire squealed. Smoke filled the frame. He was gone in 10 seconds. I set the phone down on my mahogany desk. I didn't call Arnold Vane. I didn't need a subpoena for this. I picked up my landline. I dialed the Miami-Dade Police non-emergency line. I waited for the dispatch. 1 ring, 2 rings. A woman answered. Miami-Dade Police, what is your emergency? I lowered my voice. I sounded tired. I said, I'd like to report a suspicious person. I gave her the address. I gave her the description of the Tahoe. I told her the male subject matched a warrant for financial fraud. I said he was moving large containers. He looked armed. I didn't mention the gold. I let them find that surprise. I hung up the phone. I looked out my window at the Miami skyline. The lights were twinkling. The city was sleeping. But Richard? Richard was wide awake. He's running scared. When rats start moving the cheese, it means the trap is about to snap. I printed the traffic stop report. It sat on my mahogany desk, next to the cold coffee. The paper was still warm from the laser printer. I picked it up. The staple was sharp against my thumb. The header said Miami-Dade Police Department. It was a public record, available to anyone who knows where to look. Most people don't look. Most people don't look. I don't trust, I verify. Officer J. Miller, badge number 4421. I stared at that number. 442. Richard's lucky number. His jersey number. His shell company suffix. Is the universe laughing at me? Or just handing me the rope? I smiled. It was a cold, tight smile. The timestamp on the stop was 10:42 p.m. Elias's call came in at 10:38 p.m. That means Richard left the storage unit in a panic. He was on the highway within minutes, and he was swerving, probably checking his rearview mirror, looking for unmarked cars, looking for me. But he didn't see the marked car behind him. He was too focused on the cargo in the passenger seat. The report notes, subject claimed to be coming from a business meeting. A business meeting in a storage unit in Hialeah? At 10:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Sure, Richard, that sounds totally believable. The officer bought it. Or maybe he just didn't care. He gave him a warning. Drive safely, sir. If I were that cop, I would have torn that car apart. But I'm not a cop. I'm a broker. And I play the long game. You know that feeling when you catch a liar, but you wait to spring the trap? That's how I feel right now. The notes section was my favorite part. Driver appeared extremely nervous, excessive sweating, refused to make eye contact, hands trembling slightly. I circled that part with a red pen. Evidence of consciousness of guilt. In court, Arnold will destroy him with this. Mr. Sterling, were you nervous because you were speeding, or were you nervous because you were fleeing a crime scene? I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter, cold, just like this war. Richard thinks he won. He drove away from that stop with the gold. He probably called Sienna. told her he was a genius, told her he dodged the cops. He doesn't know that a warning ticket is a legal document. He doesn't know it creates a timestamp. It places Richard Sterling in Hialeah on a Wednesday night. It places him 3 miles from the storage facility. It places him there right after the anonymous tip about a burglary. In civil court, context is everything. You can't just say, he was there. You have to prove the trail. And this report? It's the first link in the chain. Due diligence reveals everything, even the things you wish you'd hidden. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. If you were the cop, would you have searched that bag? Or let him go? I know what I would have done. I got up. I walked to the window. The Miami skyline was glowing. It looked beautiful from up here. But down there, rats are scurrying. I dropped the report into the red folder. It landed on top of the gold receipts. The folder is getting thick. It's getting heavy, just like the evidence against him. He cut away with the cash today. But now there's a police record placing him at the scene of his hidden asset stash. It's admissible. It's real. If this story is hitting close to home for you, you're not alone. And it gets better. If you want to see how I use this against him, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Drop a like if this story hit you. And tell me in the comments, would you have opened that bag? I read every single one. Richard is sitting in a squad car right now. He is sweating through that expensive suit. The police have his bag of gold. He thinks that is the worst thing happening to him tonight. He has no idea what I'm looking at. I sat back down at my mahogany desk. The police scanner app on my phone was crackling in the background. "Suspect in custody," a voice said. I turned the volume down. I had work to do. The humidity in Miami is oppressive at night. Even the AC cannot keep the moisture out. My skin felt sticky. I opened the browser on my laptop. The blue light was the only illumination in the room. I typed in the reference number for the Cayman wire transfer. October 14th, $850,000 transferred out. The destination was listed as Cayman National Trust and Company. That is what the bank statement said. But money does not just sit in the Caymans anymore. Not for a tech guy like Richard. I ran the beneficiary code through a public blockchain explorer. You can find anything if you know how to look. Have you ever tracked money on a blockchain? It is like watching a ghost move through walls. The screen loaded, blue and white bars. A long string of alphanumeric characters appeared on the monitor. It was a cold wallet address. Transaction hash 7F8A9B2. Amount 850,000 USDC. The fee was $12. You know that feeling when you find a loose thread and you just have to pull it? This was a whole sweater unraveling. I hit enter. The current balance of the wallet was 0. It had been drained. Not today, not yesterday. It was drained 3 days after the wire arrived. On the screen, the transaction history was a waterfall of numbers. Incoming, then outgoing, gone. I traced the outbound transfer. It did not go to a new shell company in Delaware. It went to a name that stopped my heart. I leaned in closer to the monitor. The screen light reflected in my eyes. The receiving entity was tagged on the ledger, MOTHERLLC. My breath caught in my throat. I physically pulled back from the desk. The chair squeaked loudly. The mouse cursor hovered over the name. It sounded familiar, too familiar. But it was not in his secret files. It was not in the red folder. If you have ever gone through old financial records, you know the feeling of seeing a number that does not match. I opened a new tab. I typed MOTHERLLC into the Florida Division of Corporations search bar. The page turned white. Then the data loaded. Status active. Date of formation, March 12, 2018. Registered agent, Harbor Corporate Solutions, 2018. That was 5 years ago. Long before Sienna. Long before the fake bankruptcy. I looked around my office. The shadows were long in the corners. The house felt too quiet. I remembered that year. We were happy, or I thought we were. I opened my bottom desk drawer. The wood creaked in the quiet room. I pulled out a box of old tax returns. I remembered the refinance. The first house, the one we sold in Coconut Grove, we pulled equity out to pay for his startup costs. He said he needed to buy servers. We signed the papers at the kitchen table. I remember the pen was running out of ink. I flipped through the stack of papers. They were paper clipped together, yellowing at the edges. I scanned the settlement statement. Line by line, attorney fees, recording fees. Then I saw it, line 402. Payoff to third party, MOTHER LLC, MOTHER LLC. I've seen that name before. Not in his files, in our files, from the refinance we did on the first house. I stared at the date on the screen. March 12, 2018. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. This wasn't a new scam. This was an old one. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was cold in the home office, but I started sweating. I pushed the chair back. It scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. I had to go to the archives. I watched downstairs to the basement. The concrete steps were cold under my bare feet. The air smelled like damp cardboard and old paint. It was heavy. I clicked on the overhead light. A single bulb flickered to life. I walked to the back wall. There was a gray metal filing cabinet there. It was locked. I pulled the key from my pocket. The lock turned with a heavy thud. I yanked the drawer open. It was stuffed with manila folders, labels written in Sharpie. 2011 taxes. 2012 insurance. I started flipping. My fingers were trembling. Paper cuts stung my skin. I wasn't looking for 2018 anymore. I needed to go back further. I tossed folders onto the floor. I was making a mess, but I didn't care. Then I found it. A folder marked House. Coconut Grove. I pulled it out. Dust motes danced in the yellow light. I sat on a plastic crate. The plastic dug into my thighs. The folder fell open on my lap. On top was an appraisal from 2012. Under that, a stack of loan papers. The header read, First National Commercial Division. Commercial. We bought a house. Why was this commercial? I picked up the document. It was thick. 50 pages of fine print. I flipped to the signature page. My signature was there in blue ink. Next to it, Richard's. I remembered this night. It was a Tuesday. We were eating pepperoni pizza from Domino's. I closed my eyes. I could see the kitchen table. Richard was wearing that gray t-shirt, the one with the hole in the collar. He pushed the paper toward me. Just sign here, babe, he had said. It's just a rate adjustment. He had marinara sauce on his chin. I wiped it off with a napkin. Then I picked up the pen. I didn't read it. I just signed. I trusted him with my life. If you've ever been in that position, you know the feeling. Blind trust in the person you love. I opened my eyes. I looked at the document again. I needed to know why it was commercial. I scanned the first page. Loan type commercial business investment. My eyes widened. I looked for the borrower name. It wasn't Richard and Marisol Sterling. It was MOTHER LLC. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I flipped to page 4, the ownership and interest section. There were 2 lines listed. Member A, Richard Sterling. Right below it, Member B, Marisol Velez. 50% ownership. Each. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't anger. It was power. I looked at the interest rate on the cover page. 2.9%. In 2012, residential rates were almost 4%. He used my name to qualify for a commercial loan. He needed a family business partner. He made me a silent partner. To save a few points. You have to admire the hustle, right? He literally used my credit score to save himself money. But there is a problem with that strategy, a very big problem for him. He got sloppy. He forgot to update the corporate charter when he moved the crypto. I stood up. The dust settled around me. I held the 2012 paper in one hand. I held the 2018 paper in the other. They were linked. The LLC was the trap he set for me, but he left the door unlocked. He forgot to remove my name when he moved the crypto there. Legally, half that crypto is mine, and half the interest it earned. The deposition was in a conference room on the 44th floor. Floor-to-ceiling glass. A view of the entire city. Richard was sitting there in a navy suit. He looked bored. He kept checking his watch. An expensive gold watch. One he claimed was stolen. He thought this was a formality. He thought his lawyers had buried the evidence. He thought he was safe. You know that look people get when they think they've won? It's ugly. It's arrogant. It makes you want to ruin them. I sat there perfectly still. My hands were folded on the table. I didn't look at the view. I looked at him. I was waiting for the trap to snap. Arnold Vane was sitting next to me. He was calm. too calm. Like a predator before the kill, he didn't have a stack of papers. He just had one folder, one single red folder. Richard's lawyer, a guy named Henderson, was droning on. Objection. Relevance. Hearsay. He was doing his job, but he didn't know the facts. He didn't know he was defending a sinking ship. The court reporter was typing in the corner. The sound was rhythmic. Click-clack, click-clack. The only sound in the room. Then Arnold cleared his throat. It wasn't loud, but it stopped Henderson mid-sentence. Arnold reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a document. Just one sheet of paper. He slid it across the mahogany table. It slid perfectly straight, stopped right in front of Richard. "Identify this document," Arnold said. Richard sighed. He picked up the paper. He barely looked at it. "It's a loan document from 2012. Richard said. "Ancient history. We refinanced that house years ago." "Read line 402, Arnold said. Richard rolled his eyes. He held the paper up to the light. The room was bright. Too bright. You could see every pore on his face. Then his eyes stopped moving. He froze. The paper was shaking. Just a little tremor in his hand. "Mother LLC," Arnold read aloud. "And listed right next to your name is Marisol Velez, 50% owner." Richard looked up. His face was pale. "That was just for the rate," Richard said. "She's a silent partner. She doesn't do anything." "Exactly," Arnold said. "She doesn't do anything. She owns half. And she didn't know you existed." Then Arnold dropped the red folder on the table. Thud. A heavy sound. "Open it," I said. Richard hesitated. His hands were hovering over the folder, like it was radioactive. "Open it," I said again. He undid the clasp. He pulled out the stack, the blockchain ledger, the crypto transfers, the wire receipts, millions of dollars, moving from the Caymans, moving to the trust, moving to Mother LLC. "You moved the crypto there," I said, "to hide it, to shield it from the divorce." "It's a trust," Richard yelled. He stood up. His chair fell over. It crashed onto the floor. "It's an irrevocable trust. You can't touch it. It belongs to my mother." The room went dead silent. The court reporter stopped typing. Richard was breathing hard, sweat on his forehead. He looked at me. He looked at Arnold. He thought he had a checkmate. He thought the dead mother was his shield. I picked up my coffee cup. It was cold. I took a sip anyway. "Richard," I said softly, "your mother died in March of 2022. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the death certificate. I slid it across the table, right next to the crypto ledger. "Eleanor Sterling is gone," I said, "and under Florida law, when a beneficiary dies, the trust fails." Richard stared at the death certificate. He looked at the LLC papers. Then he looked at the crypto totals. I could see the math happening in his head. The trust reverted to the grantor. The grantor was the LLC. The LLC was half mine. The crypto wasn't his. It was ours, and I owned half. He was ruined. He turned to his lawyer. "Object," Richard screamed. "Sue her. Do something." Henderson closed his notebook. He stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "I can't help you, Richard," Henderson said. "You lied to me. You committed perjury. I'm withdrawing as counsel." Henderson picked up his briefcase. He walked out. The door clicked shut. Richard was alone. Just him and me and the truth. It was the most beautiful silence I have ever heard. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I looked him right in the eye. He looked small. Defeated. "Richard, you don't own a mansion in Key Largo. You own a debt to the state of Florida for fraud. And I own your company." The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me. The deposition was finally over. The air in the hallway felt 10 degrees cooler. I walked straight ahead, not looking back. My heels clicked on the marble floor. It was a sharp, rhythmic sound, like a ticking clock counting down his last seconds. Richard didn't follow me out. I knew he wouldn't. He was still sitting in that leather chair, head in his hands, broken, completely defeated. I walked out the massive front doors of the courthouse. The Miami heat hit me like a physical blow. It was blindingly bright. The sky was a harsh, unforgiving blue. I stood on the top step. I held the manila folder against my chest. The paper was crisp against my fingers. Inside was the signed judgment. Dissolution of marriage. The ink was still drying. Richard's signature was shaky, a scrawl. It looked like a child's handwriting. You know that feeling when you've been holding your breath for months? And finally, you can exhale? That was this moment. I looked at the settlement summary one more time. It was beautiful. It was poetry. I got the house in Coconut Grove, the Key Largo estate, the cars, the watches, and the crypto, the cold wallet addresses. All of them. The USDC transfers from the Caymans, the holdings from EOTHER LLC, over $8 million. Richard was left with the debt, the shell companies, the tax liens, and the memory of Sienna. Speaking of Sienna, my phone buzzed in my hand, a text message notification. It was from her number. Don't try to find me, it was just business. She vanished the second the accounts froze. No loyalty, no heart, just pure greed. Richard finally walked out of the building. He stopped on the steps. He looked small. His expensive navy suit was wrinkled. His tie was loose. He looked like a man who had just lost everything because he had. He scanned the crowd looking for a ride. His car was gone, repossessed an hour ago. He looked right at me. I just stared back. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just watched him. He looked away. He looked defeated. I got into my waiting town car. The leather seat was cool. I closed the partition between me and the driver. Silence. Pure, perfect silence. I opened my bag. I pulled out a set of keys. Not house keys, office keys. To the building on Brickell? Richard thought he was smart, hiding his company in a high-rise, paying premium rent for the image. He never bothered to check who owned the building. He never checked the landlord on the lease. He just signed the checks. I bought that block 5 years ago. Through a subsidiary, Velez and Associates. He's been paying me rent for 3 years. And now, with his assets frozen, he has nowhere else to go. He has to stay. I turned to the lens. I felt the corners of my mouth turn up. It wasn't a warm smile. It was cold. It was calculated. It was the smile of a shark. I didn't just win the divorce. I acquired him. He is now a tenant in a building I own, paying me rent. Let me know in the comments if you think that's too cold, because honestly, I think it's just good business. It is 2 a.m. The office on Brickell is dead silent. The only sound is the low, steady hum of the server room down the hall. I am sitting at my mahogany desk. The final closing statement is glowing on my monitor. The cursor blinks. It is waiting. The coffee in my mug is cold. I take a sip anyway. It tastes bitter just like this victory feels right now. The war is finally over. Richard is officially insolvent. I have the houses. I have the crypto. I have the office building where he sits every single day. He thinks he is renting from a shell corporation, a faceless entity in Delaware. But every month he signs a lease payment directly to Velez and Associates. He signs his name with that fancy Mont Blanc pen I bought him. Then I deposit the check. It is the circle of life in Miami. I was just about to close the last joint account, a dormant one we missed in the initial discovery phase. Something caught my eye in the transaction history. A small recurring transfer. $50 a month. Like clockwork. It was going to a junior first savings account at First National. I clicked the link to open the details. The current balance was $52,000. The beneficiary name hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Isabella Sterling. My stepdaughter. Can you believe that? After all the lies he actually saved for her, it is the one honest thing he ever did. Suddenly, I was not in this glass office anymore. I was back in 2015, on that quiet suburban street in Coconut Grove. The sun was beating down on the hot asphalt. The air smelled like cut grass and expensive sunscreen. Isabella was on a pink bicycle with training wheels. She was screaming for me not to let go of the seat. I remember the wobble of the wheels scraping against the pavement. Her laugh when she finally found her balance. Pure joy. I remember Richard standing there on the lawn. He was actually smiling. Before the money, before the lies, before the mistresses, we looked like a real family. For a second, we actually were one. It is strange what you remember when it is all gone. My finger hovered over the liquidate button on the screen. It was a marital asset. Half of that money was legally mine. 52 grand could buy a very nice watch. Or a new piece of jewelry for me. I certainly earned it. I want you to ask yourself something. What would you have done in that moment? Be honest. You have to understand. This is the moment that defines you. Do you take the last penny? Or do you leave a bone? Due diligence reveals everything, they say. But sometimes you find things you did not want to find. I looked at the photo of Isabella on my desk. She is at university now. She did not choose her father. Richard ruined his own life. He does not get to ruin hers too with tuition debt. I closed the transfer window. I left the account exactly where it was. I changed the password to her birthday just to be safe. I did not tell Arnold. I did not put it in the red folder. It is the one secret Richard gets to keep. I saw Richard yesterday. He was walking out of the building. He looks smaller now. Older. The screen light reflects in my eyes. I look tired. But I look like a winner. He gets into his leased sedan. He drives home to an apartment I could evict him from tomorrow if I wanted. He paid for this divorce with his dignity. I paid for it with my time and my sanity. Who won? Check the ledger. The numbers do not lie. I leave the account alone. I took everything else, but she keeps her future. I am not a monster. I am just a really good real estate agent. If a story hits you in the chest, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. I have more stories. From the dark side of the deal. Turn on notifications because the market never sleeps and neither do I. Like this video if you made it to the end. And drop a comment. Tell me, was I too cold or did he get exactly what he deserved? I read every single one.